Let me tell you something most people won't like. And honestly, I don't care if it makes them uncomfortable, because comfort never made anyone wealthy. People today believe something incredibly stupid. They think living well requires a lot of money. They think comfort comes from income instead of intelligence. It's the first and most dangerous delusion of modern life. I've been in the markets for decades. I've seen traders making $500K a year who are still broke. I've seen hedge fund analysts with Ivy League degrees drowning in debt. Not because they're unlucky, but because they don't understand one simple rule. You cannot outturn bad behavior. If you don't know how to think, if you don't know how to control yourself, you can make all the money in the world and still stay broke. Only difference is you'll be broke with nicer furniture. People imagine the wealthy are rich because of their income. No. They're rich because they don't sabotage themselves. Let me be blunt. Most people today live paycheck to paycheck, not because they don't earn enough, but because they refuse to live rationally. They want the raise, the promotion, the bonus, but they also want every shiny distraction society throws at them. And society has done a phenomenal job selling noise. Advertisers have convinced you that frugality is failure, that restraint is deprivation, that prudence is poverty. They want you to think the only way to feel successful is to burn your money fast enough for strangers to notice. Let me give you the truth. Living below your means isn't deprivation, it's weaponry. It's leverage. It's freedom. When your expenses are low, you control your time. When your obligations are light, you can walk away from nonsense. When you don't owe anyone anything, life gets quiet. And quiet is where real opportunity shows up. But here's the real problem. Most people don't want freedom. They want approval. They would rather appear rich than actually be rich. They'll sacrifice decades of peace just to impress people who won't remember their names. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. A higher income doesn't fix stupidity. It scales it. If you can't manage 100,000 wisely, you won't suddenly manage 10,000 wisely. If you can't save earning $50,000 a year, you'll be just as broke at 200,000, because the problem isn't the money. The problem is the mindset. Math doesn't care about feelings. Math doesn't care about your self-esteem. Math compounds your decisions, good or bad. And most people's decisions are bad. Here's what everyone misses: the amount you actually need to live comfortably is way less than you think. Because comfort isn't created by income. Comfort comes from clarity, discipline, and the ability to say no. No debt, no noise, no financial chaos, just clean numbers and calm decisions. That's the foundation of every fortune I've ever seen, my own included. You don't need genius, you need discipline. You don't need a bigger salary, you need fewer obligations. You don't need to keep up with anyone. You need to keep your expenses small enough that you can breathe. This is where real wealth begins, not with earning more, but with needing less. Let's get into the part almost nobody notices until it's too late. Modern life has engineered a financial trap so subtle, so normalized that people walk into it smiling. I call it the monthly expense treadmill, a machine that manufactures obligations faster than you can earn your way out of them. Here's how it works. It never starts with something big, it starts small. The 12 subscription here, a harmless upgrade there, a streaming service, a food delivery app. A gym membership you'll visit twice a year. Feels reasonable, right? Of course it does. Everything is designed to feel reasonable. Then comes the next step. You buy a slightly nicer car because you've earned it. Then the insurance for that car. Then a slightly bigger apartment because you deserve more space. Then furniture to fill that space. Then gadgets to match the lifestyle you're trying to signal. Individually, each decision looks rational. Together, they become a financial chokehold. This is the treadmill. You spend more, so you need to earn more. You earn more, so you justify spending even more. And the treadmill speeds up until you're running just to stay in place. That's how people wake up at 45 with a good salary and zero peace. And here's the brutal truth: the treadmill doesn't trap you. You trap yourself by refusing to measure your life. You ask most people, how much do you spend a month? They don't know. How many bills hit your account automatically? No idea. If you lost your job tomorrow, how long could you survive without panic? Most can't go 30 days. That's not a lifestyle. That's financial Russian roulette. Wealthy people think differently. We build what I call a margin of safety, a buffer between survival and disaster. Not because we're pessimists, but because we're realists. Listen closely. The first step to financial freedom isn't making more, it's owing less. Lower expenses to higher endurance. Lower expenses to more flexibility. Lower expenses, the ability to walk away from stupidity, a toxic boss, a dumb opportunity, a bad deal. People think freedom comes from having a high income. No, freedom comes from having low obligations. Let me give you an example. If your life requires a 10,000 monthly burn rate to function, you've enslaved yourself to a high bar. One slip, one bad month, one layoff, one market crash, and you're finished. But if your life runs smoothly on $3 in a month, that's not cheap, that's power. You can take risks. You can pivot careers. You can invest aggressively. You can take a break to think, something most people haven't done in years. I've watched people spend decades building a lifestyle they secretly resent because every upgrade came with a new bill, and every new bill reduced their options. That's the real cost of consumption. It steals your optionality. And optionality is everything in trading, in business, in life. So here's your assignment. And most people will skip it, which is why most people stay financially fragile. Write down every recurring bill you have, every subscription, every debt, every automatic payment. Then ask one ruthless question. If I lost my income today, how many months could I survive without fear? If the answer is 0 or 1 or 2, then your lifestyle owns you, not the other way around. You don't fix that by earning more. You fix it by cutting the nonsense you allowed into your life. That's the treadmill. Step off it before it throws you off. Let me tell you something nobody teaches in school, yet it's the foundation of every fortune ever built. Wealth isn't about income, it's about endurance. I don't care if you earn 50,000 or 500,000. If you can't survive a disruption, you're not wealthy, you're leveraged. And leverage without discipline is a ticking bomb. People obsess over making more money. They never ask a far smarter question. How hard is it to break me? For most people, the answer is not hard at all. One medical bill, one job loss, one recession, one stupid decision, and they're done. You know why? Because they built their lives like skyscrapers on a foundation of sand. No margin of safety, no buffer, no backup plan, just hope and momentum. Hope is not a financial strategy. Momentum is not a safety net. Let me break down something simple. Your margin of safety is the gap between your obligations and your resources. The smaller your bills, the larger your safety. The larger your savings, the larger your safety. The fewer your dependencies, the larger your safety. It's simple math. But simple math is the enemy of modern lifestyle inflation. If your rent is $3,000 a month and your car payment is $900 and your credit cards are bleeding another $600s, you've chained your future to a single point of failure. Your next paycheck, that is not wealth. That is captivity disguised as comfort. The world tells you to upgrade your lifestyle, when what you should really upgrade is your buffer. Here's a phrase Warren Buffett and I live by in investing: don't get wiped out. Most people focus on getting rich, smart people focus on staying rich. Because the game ends only when you run out of time or you run out of cash. Avoid both. So let's talk about building a real margin of safety in your personal life. 1, 6 months of expenses should be the minimum, not the goal. Most people can't last 6 days without a paycheck. That's not a lack of income, that's a lack of discipline. Build a cushion and will one. Cash is oxygen when the world stops breathing. 2, eliminate fragile expenses. A fragile life is one that collapses easily. A robust life can absorb shocks. Ask yourself which bills would disappear if I stopped pretending I needed them. Cancel them, cut them, replace them, or renegotiate them. Every dollar you stop owing is a dollar you no longer fear losing. 3, protect the downside. First, people ask me where to invest their money. Wrong question. Ask, how do I make sure I never have to liquidate in a panic? Because panic selling destroys decades of progress in minutes. Lower expenses to lower panic risk. Higher savings, a higher survival rate. 4, flexibility beats luxury. The guy living in a modest apartment with a year of cash reserves is wealthier than the guy in a mansion who needs every paycheck to keep the lights on. Flexibility is wealth. Luxury is just the costume. 5, your life should be hard to break. This is the principle that separates winners from casualties. Design your lifestyle so it can absorb bad news. Income drops, you're fine. Car breaks, still fine. Market crashes, you're calm. Economy slows, still breathing. That calm, that stability, that is wealth. Long before the numbers get big, people chase the wrong scoreboard. They want status, growth, excitement. But what matters is durability. The wealthiest people I know live lives that are almost boring, predictable, structured, quiet. Why? Because they engineered safety on purpose. Here's something most people never understand. When you stop worrying about survival, your decision-making explodes in quality. You negotiate better. You invest better. You take smarter risks. You avoid emotional stupidity. Your time horizon expands. Your stress shrinks. A margin of safety isn't just financial, it's psychological. It's emotional, it's strategic. It gives you the one advantage this world cannot manufacture: artificially freedom. Now we're getting into the heart of wealth. Let's talk about something people hate to admit. Most of the things they think matter don't matter at all. Degrees don't matter. Fancy offices don't matter. Connections don't matter as much as people pretend. Reading 1,000 books doesn't matter if you can't act. In real wealth building, the kind that changes your family tree, only 2 skills matter. Just 2. Everything else is noise. And if you understand them, your life becomes predictable. Not easy, but predictable. Because they turn you from someone guessing their way through life into someone intentionally building it. Let's get into them. Skill Phase 1, the ability to take intelligent asymmetric bets. This is where 90% of people lose. They take symmetric bets, work harder, earn a bit more, save more to build a bit more. Play safe, go live safe. Symmetric bets are linear, they give you slow improvement, if any. But asymmetric bets, they're different. You take a controlled risk, and the upside is 10x, 20x, 20x, FedEx, what you put in. That's how almost every billionaire made their wealth. Not by being lucky, by being positioned. Let me give you examples. If you invest the Fowler's Arsen into an index fund, yes, it will grow, but it grows predictably, slowly, dependably, linear. But if you take that same 5,000 and deploy it into a business that can scale, a skill that can multiply your earning power, an opportunity completely mispriced by the market, or a moment of extreme emotion in the economy, the upside is nonlinear. People ask me all the time, David, how do you pick your best trades? And I always tell them, you're asking the wrong question. I don't pick trades. I pick setups. Because a setup lets you win big when you're right and lose small when you're wrong. That's asymmetry. And here's the hard truth nobody wants to hear. Most people are stuck because they only take comfortable bets. And comfortable bets never change your life. If you're scared of losing $1,000, how will you ever put yourself in a position to make a $100,000? This is why the poor stay poor. Not because they're not smart, but because they only play games where losing hurts too much and winning pays too little. Wealthy people reverse that. We look for situations where emotions are high, prices are stupid, everyone is panicking or euphoric, and value is completely mispriced. Then we strike. Not because we're brave, but because we're prepared. Opportunity doesn't come from cleverness, it comes from mispricing. And mispricing happens when the world loses its mind. This is what the average person never learns. Your biggest opportunities will feel the most uncomfortable, because that's when the crowd is wrong. Asymmetric bets are the engine of wealth. If you don't learn to identify them, you will work hard forever and stay stuck forever. But there's a second skill you need, because asymmetry means nothing if you crumble under pressure. Skill Phase 2, emotional conviction during chaos. Let me tell you something you won't hear in interviews. Markets don't pay you for being smart. Markets pay you for staying calm while everyone else loses their mind. In 2008, I made billions not because I knew everything, but because I didn't panic when everyone else did. Conviction isn't a feeling, it's a process. It's built before the chaos, not during it. People break because they rely on emotion instead of preparation. They think they're strong until the market drops 20%. The news screams collapse and their friends start selling. Then suddenly their confidence evaporates. Why? Because it wasn't real confidence, it was crowd confidence. If your confidence comes from other people, you will collapse when they do. If your confidence comes from your own analysis, you will stay steady when they fall apart. That's the difference. Let me make this painfully clear. If you can't stay rational during chaos, you will never build real wealth. Not in markets, not in business, not in life. Conviction is built from studying the downside, understanding your risk, knowing your time horizon, accepting volatility, and planning for the worst while aiming for the best. Here's how you know you're developing conviction. You become less reactive and more strategic. When prices drop, you don't panic. You analyze. When people scream, this time is different, you ask, is it actually different? Or just louder? When the world is fearful, you don't hide. You observe. Conviction gives you the courage to buy when things are cheap, and the discipline not to buy when things are expensive. Most people do the opposite. They buy when it feels safe and sell when it feels scary. That's why they stay trapped. Conviction allows you to flip the script. Why these two skills run the world? Let me put this in one sentence. If you can spot asymmetric opportunities, and hold your nerve when others can't, you will become wealthy. Guaranteed? Maybe not if things go well. Guaranteed, because the world constantly creates mispricing. Fear creates discounts. Euphoria creates bubbles. Confusion creates opportunity. Impatience creates mistakes. You can think clearly when these happen, you will always be ahead of everyone else. These two skills aren't flashy. They aren't sold in online courses. You can't learn them from motivational quotes. You learn them by watching the world with a cold, rational eye. But once they're in you, your life changes. You stop chasing money because money starts flowing toward you. You stop fearing the future because you're prepared for it. And you stop trying to impress people because you're too busy building something real. Everyone wants to get rich. That part is easy. What's hard, what almost nobody can do, is the discipline part. Not the hustle, not the motivation, not the hype. I'm talking about the kind of discipline that makes you act on your strategy even when every part of you wants to do the opposite. The discipline to stick with a plan when everyone around you is panicking, bragging, lying, flexing, quitting, or pretending. That's real discipline. And it's rare. So rare that it becomes a competitive edge. Let me give you the truth as simply as possible. The wealth gap is not really an intelligence gap. It's a discipline gap. People don't fail because they're dumb. They fail because they break under pressure, distraction, or noise. Let's get into the three forms of discipline that matter and why most people fail at every single one. The discipline phi 1, the discipline to follow a boring strategy consistently. You want to know why most people stay stuck? Because they chase excitement instead of results. Everyone wants a strategy that feels good, fast, emotional, dramatic, thrilling, high adrenaline. But wealth is built through boring repetition. Consistency compounds, excitement destroys. If your plan only works when you're motivated, it's not a plan, it's a fantasy. A real strategy works on average days, on tired days, on stressful days, on days when life hits you and you want to quit. That is where the compounding happens. Here's the part most people don't understand. Your strategy doesn't need to be brilliant. It needs to be repeatable. Small, predictable actions create massive, unpredictable outcomes. Look at anyone who built wealth. They invested consistently, they learned consistently, they executed consistently, they improved consistently, they avoided chaos consistently. Even my biggest wins weren't built on genius. They were built on the discipline to stick with a setup when others got bored, distracted, or emotional. Think about that for a moment. The world loves excitement, but markets reward discipline. And that's why most people never see the upside. They tap out way too early. Discipline feint 2, the discipline to delay your rewards longer than everyone else. This is where almost everyone breaks. Delayed gratification is simple. Give up what you want right now for something bigger later. Sounds easy, feels impossible. Let me show you why. Most people want a 10-year result with a 10-minute attention span. They want the rewards of long-term thinking while operating with short-term impulses. So they sabotage themselves. They quit too early. They chase shiny objects. They panic during setbacks. They rush decisions. They want results before mastery. In my career, the biggest money was always made by waiting longer than the market was willing to wait. Because the market has a short attention span. People have even shorter ones. If you can delay gratification longer than other people, you don't just outperform them, you outlast them. Let me say this as clearly as possible. There is no wealth without delayed gratification. None. You cannot have freedom and impulse, wealth and impatience, mastery and shortcuts, long-term results and short-term habits. Pick one. You can't have both. People say they're long-term thinkers. Then the moment the market dips 5%, they panic. The moment business slows, they lose belief. The moment they don't see quick results, they jump ship. That's not long-term thinking. That's long-term pretending. Real long-term thinking means you can endure discomfort without losing your strategy, because discomfort is part of the process. Anyone can delay gratification for a week. Winners delay it for years, and that's why they win. Discipline feint 3, the discipline to ignore 99% of the noise. You want to know the fastest way to fail. Compare yourself to everyone else. If you judge your decisions based on what others are doing, what others are buying, what others are saying, what others are afraid of, what others brag about, oh, you're finished. Because the crowd is wrong more often than it's right. Most people make decisions by looking sideways, not forward. They check what their friends are doing, what social media says, what everyone else is chasing. Then they mimic it. The problem, crowds are emotional. They swing between fear and greed. They chase hype and panic at the bottom. If you follow them, your results will be the same as theirs. And most of them are broke. So why listen to them? Here's a rule I've lived by my entire career. When everyone is loud, turn quiet. When everyone is quiet, turn focused. When everyone is certain, ask questions. When everyone is panicking, look for opportunity. Noise destroys clarity. Clarity creates advantage. In investing, in business, in life, the skill isn't knowing everything, it's knowing what to ignore. Most of your success will come from what you don't react to. Not reacting is a discipline. Staying calm is a discipline. Keeping emotion out is a discipline. Noise is constant. Discipline is rare. That's why disciplined people win. The three disciplines combine into one outcome separation. You've heard the saying, success leaves clues. That's true. But failure leaves patterns. And the biggest pattern is this: people sabotage themselves faster than the world ever could. They don't fail because they chose the wrong market. They fail because they couldn't stay in the right one long enough. They don't fail because they weren't capable. They fail because they weren't consistent. They don't fail because they lacked opportunity. They fail because they lack discipline. The truth is simple: wealthy people aren't special. They're consistent. They do the boring work. They delay the gratification. They ignore the noise. They hold the line longer than everyone else. And because of that, results eventually tilt in their favor, dramatically. That is the separation. People think success happens suddenly. It doesn't. It happens quietly, behind the scenes. Through disciplined choices repeated so many times, they become identity. That identity becomes advantage. Advantage becomes wealth. Wealth becomes freedom. And freedom is the real goal. Let me end this with the most important lesson I've learned in my entire career. The lesson that flipped the switch for me. That separated everything before from everything after. No one is coming to save you. But the moment you accept that, you become unstoppable. People waste years waiting for the right moment, waiting for a sign, waiting for things to get easier, waiting for approval, waiting for someone to tell them, now is the time. It never comes. And the people who wait become the people who regret. Let me tell you a truth that sounds harsh, but is actually liberating. The world doesn't owe you success, stability, luck, timing, or opportunity. It only gives you one thing: choice. Your life is shaped by the choices you make and the ones you refuse to make. Nothing else. People like to think wealth comes from brilliance. It doesn't. It comes from agency. The decision to take ownership of your trajectory instead of outsourcing it. The people who rise are the people who act. Even small actions create massive asymmetry over time. Most people fall into one of two traps. Trap find one. The blame trap, where your entire life becomes a story about who wronged you, what you didn't have, why you couldn't start, why you didn't get chances. Blame feels good. It protects your ego. It gives you excuses. But it also chains you, because if someone else is responsible for your problems, someone else must be responsible for your solutions. That's helplessness disguised as logic. It never leads to power. Trap feint 2. The fantasy trap, this one is more subtle and more dangerous. People dream of becoming wealthy, but they fantasize instead of strategizing. They imagine the results: the house, the freedom, the bank account, the lifestyle, but they never break it down into steps. They never build the skill. They never take the uncomfortable actions. They never build conviction, discipline, or asymmetry. Hope is not a strategy. Dreams are not systems. Wishing is not execution. The fantasy trap keeps people busy without making progress. The shift happens when you realize you are the system, not luck, not timing, not mentors, not market cycles, not motivation. Your habits, your decisions, your analysis, your discipline, your reactions, your appetite for discomfort, your ability to stay calm when others collapse, your ability to keep going when the results aren't visible yet. People see someone successful and think they're different, they had advantages. No. They built different systems within themselves. Let me repeat that so it sinks in. The most powerful system in your life is the system you build inside yourself. Once you install the right internal system, the external world becomes easier, not because the world changes, but because you operate differently. You stop needing reassurance, you stop needing permission, you stop needing certainty, you stop needing validation. You start making moves instead of excuses. You start building instead of waiting. You start thinking independently instead of emotionally. That's how lives change, not through luck, through transformation. The real breakthrough is this: wealth is a byproduct, not a goal. Most people chase wealth directly, but wealth is never the first domino, it's the last. The real sequence looks like this: you build discipline. Discipline builds consistency. Consistency builds competence. Competence builds confidence. Confidence builds conviction. Conviction creates asymmetric opportunities. Asymmetric opportunities build wealth. Wealth builds freedom. Everyone wants step 7. Almost no one wants step 1. And that's why most people never arrive. Because they want the outcome without the identity. They want the freedom without the transformation. They want the wealth without the internal rewiring. The sequence can't be cheated. Not with shortcuts. Not with motivation. Not with hype. You build the foundation, or you stay stuck. That's the truth. Life becomes different when you realize you don't need to be perfect. Only prepared people think winners are fearless. No, they're prepared. They think winners know the future. No, they understand the downside. They think winners are confident all the time. No, they build processes stronger than their emotions. Preparation beats emotion. Systems beat motivation. Conviction beats panic. Discipline beats chaos. And once you internalize that, you stop overthinking and you start executing. You start acting like someone who knows they're responsible for their own trajectory. And that's when acceleration happens, not slowly, but suddenly, because the moment your habits align with your goals, growth becomes inevitable. The final truth: your life will change the moment you decide to bet on yourself, not halfway, not casually, not when things calm down, but fully. Because betting on yourself forces you to think differently. It forces you to grow. It forces you to adapt. It forces you to become someone capable of the life you want. Let me end with this: you don't need permission to change your life. You need responsibility. Responsibility is power. Agency is power. Conviction is power. Discipline is power. Rationality is power. Everything else is noise. Once you accept that no one is coming to save you, you stop waiting. You start building. You start thinking independently. You start creating asymmetry. You start becoming dangerous. And at that point, wealth isn't something you chase. It's something you attract, because you've become the kind of person who creates it.